The world is looking to Germany at this hour, and the world should know we're aware of our responsibility and we will fulfill it. I was firmly convinced that unification would come. I always hoped that God would let me live long enough to experience it. I hoped to be able to play a part.
Und ich habe mir gewünscht, dass ich daran mitwirken kann.
It was a feeling of deep satisfaction to have helped make this possible. This process that led to Germany's freedom and to German unification after the horror that Germany unleashed 50 years earlier. It's something to be proud of to this day.
Darauf konnte man und kann man bis heute stolz sein.
The beginning of the 2+4 talks on the Rhine. The foreign ministers of the two Germanys, Hans-Dietrich Genscher and Markus Merkel, plus representatives of the four Allies who defeated Germany in the Second World War. The Germans knew that the ultimate issue of sovereignty and unification could only be resolved with skillful negotiation. Genscher largely led the talks. The goal, a unified Germany within NATO. Support from US Secretary of State James Baker was a done deal, but the others needed to be convinced that a united Germany, firmly rooted in Europe, would also be kept in check by Europe.
I was always of the opinion that we could never achieve unification in isolation, but European unification could also not take place without Germany. We are the nation in the middle of Europe, and we're inextricably linked with the fate of Europe. And this naturally helped us to overcome some of the concerns that were there.
Concerns held by Britain's Foreign Minister Douglas Hurd, for example. His government feared a unified Germany might gain too much political and economic power. The French delegation, led by Roland Dumas, had similar reservations, and hardliners in the Soviet government were vehemently opposed to NATO membership for a united Germany. Russian Foreign Minister Eduard Shevardnadze supported rapprochement, but wanted NATO membership to be addressed only after unification.
The question in the first weeks was whether Shevardnadze would prevail with his position of opening up to the West and being willing to cooperate with the West.
The German foreign ministers won permission for Germany to form a unified state, but the devil still lay in the details. June 1990. The border crossing station on Checkpoint Charlie in Berlin is removed. A world-famous symbol of Germany's Cold War division becomes history. It was the day of the second round of 2+4 talks. The images convey the sense of change that's in the air. Later that day, East German Foreign Minister Markus Merkel received the other negotiators in East Berlin. The mood was relaxed at first. Countless telephone calls and discussions had revealed that the skeptics among the participants were ready for a compromise, including Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev. But then came a new demand from the Kremlin, that the status quo be maintained for 5 years, with West Germany remaining in NATO and East Germany in the Warsaw Pact. That was a bitter setback.
It was difficult for them to understand that the victory of freedom and democracy didn't have to be a loss for the Soviet Union, that it could actually be a gain, because the Soviets would then also be heading for democracy.
A NATO summit in London in early July took steps to bridge the gap. NATO agreed it would no longer view the Warsaw Pact as a threat, a fundamental shift in policy. And a few days later, Gorbachev outmaneuvered the hardliners in the Kremlin. He was re-elected Secretary General of the Communist Party. He would later say that NATO probably helped him prevail. In the middle of July, West German Chancellor Helmut Kohl and his foreign minister went to the Caucasus region at Gorbachev's invitation. Before he left, Kohl said he would only travel there if the Soviets were going to agree to NATO membership for a united Germany. And when he got there, the Soviet leader granted his wish. But in return, Gorbachev wanted financial aid. The Soviet Union was in the middle of a deep economic and social crisis. As many as 100 million people were living on the breadline. So Germany paid for the withdrawal of Soviet troops from Eastern Germany.
We paid a sum that was supposed to take care of the returning Soviet troops. I think it was 12 billion Deutschmarks. When I think how much money we are paying today to support banks and currencies, that seems a relatively modest sum.
Währungen ausgegeben wird, ist das ein vergleichsweise bescheidener Betrag gewesen.
2+5. The talks in Paris in July were expanded to include Polish Foreign Minister Krzysztof Skubiszewski. As part of the unification deal, Eastern Germany's border with Poland, along the Oder-Neisse rivers, had to become permanent. A month earlier, the parliaments in both East and West Germany had each ratified the post-war border. In Paris, the foreign ministers agreed that a united Germany would sign a treaty with Poland to fix the current border once and for all. At the last 2+4 meeting in Moscow, only a few more details needed addressing before a document could finally be signed. But a last-minute demand by British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher threatened to ruin everything. She wanted the Western Allies to have the right to stage manoeuvres in territory that had been part of Eastern Germany. The Soviets seemed to be running out of patience.
Shevardnadze said that Gorbachev was no longer willing to negotiate. So I had to wake James Baker in his hotel and tell him that we had to sign the document in the morning the way it was, the way we had agreed, and that we simply could not reopen the negotiations.
The resolution to stand firm worked, and the British withdrew their demand. So the six parties finally signed off on the document, with the new Prime Minister Lothar de Maizière signing for East Germany after Markus Meckel had resigned. Germany was a sovereign state and a member of NATO, and the path to unification was finally clear.
It was a great joy that we Germans could experience this. We helped make that joy happen, and we were aware of that at the time.
For me personally, German unification was the fulfillment of all my political dreams. It was one of the happiest days of my life. And when you see the signatures on the document, you can tell that my hand was trembling as I signed it.